Welcome to Make a Path Presents. I'm Ronnie Hayes, and today let's talk Game of Thrones Season 6, Episode 3, Oathbreaker. Now, first thing I want to talk about Jon Snow. I love Jon Snow. He's my favorite character in Game of Thrones. I've said this a number of times, but I really like the open here. I like how when he came back to life, he was out of breath, and then Braavos, when we started this, Braavos is looking at him in awe. I think everybody was, even Melisandre, when she came in, she was looking at him in awe. His interaction with his friends is in little mini parts, and I love how he gets a little piece out of each interaction. Like, for example, Braavos, when he gets the advice to fail again, which is really good advice. If you talk to a lot of successful people, they tell you to, fail again, essentially. Not to purposely fail again, but the point is to try. There's lots of people who fail 5 times before they succeed, and if you quit after failing once, you are a complete failure. Now, after that, he goes to Tormund, and Tormund makes fun of his pecker. He's like, oh, these people think you're gods, but I don't, because I saw the size of your little pecker. And then Jon winces when he gives him a hug, which makes me think he's still healing up. Is that how that works? But I love that he goes to a wildling, gets a hug, jokes around with him. They show that connection there. Love, respect, friendship, whatever. They show that. Then he goes to one of his brothers in the Night Watch. You know what I mean? Same thing. So you have the wildling, brother in Night Watch. And then they even have a joke where Jon's like, hold off on burning my body later. So you see how we have that interaction with Braavos, and then the wildling, and then the Night's Watch. I don't know. It has a wonderful connection there that I just really like. I think what is this? What are you doing? I think between the wildling and the Night's Watch, I think that is the best, because those have been enemies for so long now, those two groups of people. And then you have this one man who now has, respect and friendship between essentially the leaders of both now, because at the end of the episode, he gives the cloak over to, forget his name, but fuck it, you can curse me out in the comments below, gives the cloak to him, and he says, my watch is ending, and I think that is absolutely awesome. I think that's an epic way to end an episode, not only for what that means, but for the fans, because a lot of fans, and I'm not a book reader again, but I know a lot of fans are talking about the connection with Jon and where this is going to go with the story, and I just depressed myself because I got really excited for Sansa to finally meet up with Jon, and I bet you, how about Sansa's going to get there and Jon leaves before she does? How shitty would that be? Oh, I just depressed myself. Let's move on. But everything that's happening with Jon, I like. Let's move on to something I didn't like. Sam and Gilly. I don't know what it is about them. Didn't like it. I might have laughed too hard, though, when she called him the father of the baby that wasn't his, and he threw up. I know it was because he was seasick or something like that, but I thought that was kind of funny. Let's talk about Daenerys, the mother of dragons. Listen, this, again, it still feels like she was taken out of her storyline. Maybe her story can't progress yet, so they're like, okay, we need to kind of put her on standby. So they take her out of this story, have a dragon drop her off, and then you have Tyrion to come into her story and make it more interesting. I've talked about this before. This is how it feels, in my opinion, and it still feels that way. Now, they could go somewhere else down the line, and I can actually like the story. Like in the next episode, they could do something really interesting with her story, and I could be like, okay, I see why they went there, and I'm actually liking it because of where they ended. But for right now, I'm not feeling it. Alright, next let's talk about Bran. This is really cool. Now, it's going to take a lot of self-discipline to not stay too long. Now, the old man who's mentoring him keeps reminding him, you can't stay too long. But one thing they did really cool in this scene that I think a lot of fans might overlook is connecting the character's frustration with our frustration. Now, again, I'm not a book reader, but I see a lot of fans talking about something that's happening in that tower might give us, some information on Jon and show that he's a Targaryen or some shit like that. We don't know. I'm just spitting out rumors again. I don't know. I might have said the wrong thing, but what I'm saying is, as fans, we're so interested and we want to follow Bran in that tower, but the old guy not only shuts Bran out, but he shuts us out as well. So I know some of us might get mad at HBO and be like, oh, what the hell, whoop-de-whoop. But that was actually pretty cool because it's putting us in his shoes, in that frustration. When he's frustrated about not being able to go in and see, that's how we are. We're frustrated too. See how they do that? That's a little trick they do in filmmaking that I really like, because sometimes it can really piss you off, and later when you look at it, you're like, okay, fine, I get it. I get it. Let's talk about little birds here. This is pretty cool. Now, again, I'm not a book reader, and I had to binge watch seasons 1 through 5, so I might have missed this, but I had no fucking clue what little birds were. I thought they were just like people he paid and this, that, and a third. And now it seems like it's revealed that they are just kids. I'm sure that's in the book. I'm sure I'm like the last one to get this. But I think that's cool because in the previous thing he talked about he doesn't trust men or something like that. He only trusts little birds. Which now it makes sense if little birds are only kids and they bring back whispers. Because it seems like the guy spelled it out there and I'm hearing it. But I don't remember that ever happening in the past where they spelled it out like that. That's why I'm making a big deal out of it. That I'm like, well, I finally know what little birds are. And another thing I want to talk about, though, is Cersei, when she was talking about how if you see any or hear anyone making fun of me, if you get any whispers of this or that, or if you have whispers of anyone who wants to benefit from the downfall of our family, I want to know. She reminded me of Hillary Clinton. Something about it, I don't know. But now Lord Varys, I think this is cool because now you see Varys talking to that chick who I believe it's the same chick who helped stab up some of the Unsullied. This is cool though because now you get to see Lord Varys work his magic, and we've seen it in season 1 and 2. We've seen it a lot, I believe, if I remember correctly. We've seen it a lot in season 1. Him and Littlefinger used to go back and forth, and I used to remember being annoyed because of Littlefinger's accent used to really get under my skin. But I thought this was cool, and it was kind of refreshing to see him bargaining again. It was kind of like bargaining, it was kind of like threatening, but I thought it was refreshing, especially after these seasons where I went from not really liking him in season 1 to where now I kind of do like him, so I think that's cool. Moving on to Arya, though, talking about something cool, is we're seeing her get turned into a badass. Now, again, I have no clue what's going on with the books and the seasons and what's ahead of us, so I have no clue what they're doing with Arya. It feels like it kind of contradicts what I would want them to do with her. They're making her a badass. That's awesome. But it seems like they're trying to, break her, obviously, from her own background, herself. You're nobody, you're this, you're this. Now listen, that might be a way to become like a lethal weapon, to be skilled and to be stealthy. That might be training in that aspect. But will she leave after completing all that? Will she leave and then be able to take, revenge on the people that wronged her? Will she leave and then be able to connect back up with her family? Because here's where the conflict is. I love that they're making her badass, but now I'm confused as hell because it's like, well, wait a minute. If they turn her so badass, but it's for the many-faced god or whatever, and she's off to do his beckoning, does that mean she can't go back to her old life? Because that is definitely what it seems. She has to get rid of all her possessions. She has to be nobody. Now, again, I'm saying this with trying to say that I understand that is basically like her way of training to become no one, to wear many faces or whatever it is. She's fighting without having eyesight, and then later she gets her eyesight back and all that, whatever. They're trying to break her. It's training, it's conditioning. I get all that. But again, in the same strength, it feels like when she's completely done, she's not going to be able to go back to her old life, vengeance, loved ones, or etc. So I think that was kind of odd. Two funny things I want to talk about here. One is with the Mountain, where Jaime Lannister's like, oh, he couldn't understand complete sentences before, and the Mountain looks at him. They have this funny scene like that, but then they have a farting scene where, is it Master Pycelle's talking about how they should just put him down or kill him, and here he comes, the Mountain's, with his armor, he's stomping into the room, and then Master Pycelle looks over to him, and there's a little fart, and it sounded like something a 15-year-old YouTuber would put into a video where it's like, watch my super funny mashup of Game of Thrones, and it's just people staring off quietly with fart sounds. You ever see those mashups where you think you're going to watch a funny, interesting mashup, and it's literally just fart sounds or something stupid like that? It sounded like that instead of being something kind of authentic Game of Thrones. Maybe it just wasn't my kind of sense of humor. I mean, it was a little bit funny, you know what I mean? If you thought it was funny, I can see where you're coming from, but in my opinion, it felt like something a little kid would do on YouTube and not, HBO with Game of Thrones. So that threw me off a little. Last thing, Rickon Stark, and the Wildling, she came back. Were they gone all 5th season? Because I don't remember them either now. I'm lost about what happened. I know they were traveling with Bran, and there was that part where they broke off because Bran is like, "Oh, you're not coming with me." Again, I am lost. I totally forgot about them. When they took the hats off, I was like, "Oh, I know the chick." And then they took the dude's hat off, and I was like, "Wait a minute, wasn't that kid dead?" And I was like, "Nope, the dead kid was the other girl's brother." Now I'm lost. So refresh my memory if I don't catch the recap. Anyway, I really like this episode. I would have to rate this as, I'm going to say a high good, but I do feel like they pulled back a little on this episode. I feel like they came really, really hard with episode 1, episode 2, and it's not a bad thing, but I feel like they pulled back a little bit and they're working with some of the storyline, building some things up, and moving some pieces into play. I really feel like they did, but it was still good. I had a lot of fun with this episode, and I'm looking forward to next week, kind of, sort of, because there's a couple storylines they look like they're going to be covering that I'm not all that thrilled about, like Theon going back to the Iron Islands with his sister and everything, and then you have this shit with the Mother of Dragons, you know? And if they do something cool, I'll start looking back at it when I rewatch this, and I won't be so annoyed as if they just took her out of her own story, you know what I mean? Whatever. Thoughts and opinions in that comment box. I'm done talking. It's your turn. Subscribe, man.